The camera focuses tightly on a pair of trembling, mud-caked hands. He is a young German sentry stationed in the freezing, waterlogged trench lines of the Western Front. His stomach has been empty for 3 agonizing days, a hollow cavity echoing the broader collapse of his empire's supply lines. Suddenly, a heavy tin arcs through the darkness and lands with a dull thud at his boots. It is a tin of corned beef. The rich, almost intoxicating scent of preserved fat fills the damp air. Wow, he tears it open, swallowing the contents with desperate, primal hunger. Believing in a fleeting moment of frontline humanity, a temporary pause in the grand humanitarian tragedy, he calls out into the darkness, asking for more. A second object drops from the sky, landing heavily in the freezing mud right where the food had been. But this one offers no sustenance. The camera catches the cold, metallic glint of a grenade, its pin already absent. A blinding flash of light erases the trench. There is no unspoken peace treaty to be found here in the dirt. This sentry has just become another casualty of Canada's shock troops. The lens pulls rapidly upward, breaking through the thick, acrid smoke, leaving the young sentry behind as he clutches his severely traumatized arm. Up here, hovering above the strategic command maps of 1917, a grand historical illusion completely shatters. While modern popular culture has consistently painted this North American nation as a land of unending politeness, diplomatic restraint, and perpetual apologies. But the rigid ink of military records dictates a vastly different, far more unyielding reality. When examining the broader World War history, the high command of the British Empire did not hold these forces back in reserve. Instead, they were frequently positioned directly into the very first wave of major assault campaigns. They were the designated blunt instrument for breaking stalemates. Looking down at the sprawling trench network leading up to the pivotal Battle of Vimy Ridge, the strategic data is staggering. In merely 4 months leading up to that specific offensive, these units executed exactly 55 deliberate trench raids. This was not a series of random skirmishes. This was a highly calculated, meticulously organized elimination campaign designed to erode the opposition's psychological endurance. The efficiency of this operation was so terrifyingly precise that opposing German forces did not view them as mere colonial infantry. They bestowed upon them titles of dread, referring to them in operational dispatches as Stormtroopers and wild Colonials. The decisions were finalized in grand, velvet-lined war rooms, but the execution of those orders required a descent into absolute darkness. The camera plunges back down from the sterile heights of strategic overview, returning to the suffocating claustrophobia of the shattered trench line. The young German sentry leans against the collapsed earth, his breathing shallow and erratic. He stares blankly at a torn military bulletin half buried in the mud near his boots. The ink is smudged, but it outlines a chilling directive issued by an opposing officer right before the impending assault. Do not take prisoners, for they will merely consume our limited rations. The cold calculus of logistics had officially overridden the established rules of engagement. Through the dense fog, shadows begin to move. They do not wear the standard helmets of regular infantry. To conceal their presence in the dead of night, these figures have blackened their faces entirely with burnt cork and wear thick rubber gloves to hide the pale skin of their hands. They move without a single footstep echoing in the muck. They do not carry standard-issue rifles, which are too unwieldy for the narrow, claustrophobic corridors of the earth. Instead, the sentry watches in silent horror as they brandish customized implements of close-quarters combat, spiked clubs, heavy trench knives, and brass knuckles. The young German guard, clutching his wounded limb, watches as the chaotic physical tragedy unfolds around him. Just a few meters away, a fellow defender throws down his weapon, raising both hands in a desperate plea for quarter. But the approaching figure, moving with the terrifying efficiency of Canada's shock troops, does not retrieve binding ties. Instead, he reaches out, casually slipping a live explosive device with its pin extracted directly into the pocket of the surrendering man's heavy winter coat. The guard squeezes his eyes shut before the inevitable detonation shakes the earth. Any illusion of chivalry evaporates into the freezing mist. When a combatant attempts a last-minute strike before yielding, the immediate response is a swift, fatal thrust of a bayonet. Leniency is mathematically impossible when the prevailing doctrine demands absolute clearance. The camera swiftly ascends from the suffocating mud, returning to the detached, objective view of the high command. From this elevated perspective, it becomes clear that this localized nightmare is merely a fraction of a grander strategic design. Trench raiding had evolved from mere intelligence-gathering patrols into massive, devastating military enterprises. By March of 1917, military ledgers record an astonishing operation involving over 1,300 personnel, pushing an entire kilometer deep behind opposing fortification lines. The cost of such aggressive maneuvers was astronomical. These units often endured a 43% casualty rate and faced horrific chemical deterrents, yet they successfully neutralized 450 meters of entrenched infrastructure. The psychological toll on these men was immeasurable. Official accounts detail instances where a single company lost half its personnel to heavy automated fire. When the remaining survivors finally overran the position, those attempting to surrender were immediately eliminated without hesitation. We pull the lens back entirely now, leaving the scarred landscapes of the early 20th century behind to reflect on the nature of these historical narratives. The profound irony here is inescapable. We instinctively want to believe that cultural stereotypes of extreme politeness and diplomacy can somehow survive the extreme pressures of a global conflict. But when empires drag common citizens into a mechanized meat grinder, the thin veneer of civilization is always the first casualty. To survive the impossible, ordinary men are forced to abandon every shred of their humanity, transforming their most fundamental needs, even the desperate hunger for a simple tin of corned beef, into a weapon of psychological devastation. That is exactly why here at Simple Secret History, we refuse to merely accept the polished, sanitized versions of the past written by the victors. The uncomfortable truth is that behind every peaceful national identity, there lies a history written by individuals who were pushed to the absolute limits of moral endurance. Understanding the true nature of Canada's shock troops serves as a stark reminder that in the crucible of total warfare, the nice guy myth is nothing more than a ghost story told by those who never had to face the darkness of the trenches.